You're never supposed to touch the fire or the grid, not unless the Braymaster gives you specific, like, personal permission. It just sounds so incredibly rigid, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
It's not a rule about cooking. It's a social. It's an enforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's all wrapped in smoke.
Right.
Why does food need a dictator?
Because controlling that heat is the hardest part. I mean, the really, really hard part.
So the difficulty is the point.
Exactly. What you're pointing at is, it's fascinating. The technical skill immediately gets, like, translated into a social requirement. It builds a hierarchy on the spot.
Okay.
If you know that managing a fire from, say, Camille Doring wood takes hours of just patient, focused mastery, then the person who controls that fire automatically gets authority over the whole group.
So it's performance anxiety.
Performance anxiety and competence, all validated by this super rigid etiquette. You see that intensity and you just know, okay, this is not just dinner. This is something else. It's a ritual.
It is. And, when you realize that even in American BBQ, there's this fierce, just bitter debate over something that is purely visual, the smoke ring, which, by the way, science confirms adds zero flavor.
Zero.
The stakes aren't about taste, they're about loyalty, status, and just maintaining this whole invisible set of rules.
And that is the core of what we're looking into here.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Today we are going deep, really deep, into the world of meat cooked over fire. You can call it barbecue, braai, asado, it doesn't matter.
Our mission is to look right past the recipes, past the difference between a dry rub and a wet rib, past the simple geography of it all. We want to explore why this completely universal act of cooking is so tangled up with national pride, with historical myths, and with this incredibly rigid social control that you almost never see.
Right. We've gone through sources that lay out all the objective physical rules of the pit. The chemistry of smoke, the physics of cooling, the exact temperatures for collagen breakdown.
Those are the mechanical facts.
They are.
But the central tension, the thing we're really exploring, is this. Those physical rules are objective science. But the emotional rules, the political rules that decide who cooks and what they cook and how we all judge it, those are entirely invented. They're built on economics and history, and yet they are defended with this furious passion you'd normally reserve for it, like a border dispute.
A perfect place to start, then, is with the loudest of those battles, the American BBQ wars.
Let's do it.
Okay, so when you look at the U.S., barbecue isn't one thing. It's fragmented. It's like a civil war of regional styles.
It really is.
And it's not just about what tastes good. It's about these deep structural incentives that are just rooted in agricultural history. So we can start by defining let's call them the foundational four.
Okay.
And they're really distinguished by what gets prioritized. Is it the meat, the sauce, or the type of wood?
And leading that charge, as always, is Texas.
Oh.
The beef kingdom. I mean, this style is structurally incentivized from the ground up by the state's massive cattle ranching culture. It's a commodity that has to be maximized.
Which means brisket is king.
Brisket is the undisputed king, yeah. And so the entire focus shifts away from, masking the flavor. It's all about enhancing the quality of that specific cut of meat.
And the wood they use, post oak, that's part of it too.
So post oak is prized because it has this clean, very consistent smoke that doesn't just bulldoze the flavor of the beef.
And the rub. It's almost hilariously simple.
It's a statement. Coarse kosher salt, black pepper, the Dalmatian rub, maybe some dried onion or garlic powder.
But that's it. Anything more is seen as...
It's seen as hiding something. That minimalist approach is it's aggressively ideological. They see a heavy sauce as a cover-up.
Right. It implies the meat wasn't good enough to begin with.
Or that the pitmaster just didn't have the skill to cook it right. So the whole integrity of the process is tied to the purity of the ingredients.
And the bark is a huge part of that.
Oh, the bark is everything. That dense, smoky, black, almost crunchy crust. It is absolutely essential. Without a good bark, you don't have real Texas barbecue.
And sauce.
Sauce, if you even see it, is served kind of apologetically on the side, like it's a concession for, the tourist.
But even inside Texas, it's not that simple, is it? The state is so huge.
So huge that its own sovereignty is split. You've got 4 distinct subregions, which just shows how local resources still shape everything. Central Texas is the epicenter.
That's the pure, no sauce, dry rub, brisket tradition.
That's the one. But then you go to East Texas. As you move towards like the swampier, less cattle-focused areas, the preference shifts.
Okay.
They lean toward cheaper cuts, often chopped, not sliced. and it's served swimming in this much sweeter tomato-based sauce.
That shift right there, from sliced to chopped, from no sauce to heavy sauce, that's an economic indicator.
Totally. It's a way to tenderize and add moisture to a less premium product.
Yeah.
It's a compromise for accessibility.
And then South Texas, that's a whole different story.
South Texas is fascinating. It's all about barbacoa and Mexican flavors. I mean, they're cooking whole heads of cattle in the ground. It's clear proof that border culture has always been part of this, long before modern food trucks.
And finally, West Texas.
West Texas is the most rustic, the most rebellious, maybe. They're doing open pit cooking, more direct heat, hotter.
And different wood, right? Mesquite?
Mesquite, yeah, which has a much stronger, more aggressive flavor that it imparts very quickly. So it's a faster cook. It's less meticulously controlled than what you see in Central Texas. The whole system is just this optimized machine to maximize the value of beef, but it adapts to local constraints.
But it's always beef first.
Always. But the second you jump east, everything flips on its head.
You land in Memphis, the rib capital.
And suddenly beef is gone.
Yeah.
It's all pork.
All pork. Ribs and pulled pork, which reflects the South's historical reliance on hogs because they were just easy to raise. And the defining feature here isn't the meat, it's this choice you have to make.
Wet or dry.
Exactly. It's such an interesting binary because it's really two different philosophies of how you deliver flavor.
So dry ribs, that's a heavy spice rub.
A really heavy rub. Lots of paprika, brown sugar, chili. And you eat them just like that, no sauce at all.
So the idea is that the smoke and the spice application are enough.
It's an assertion of sufficiency, yeah. But then wet ribs are the total opposite.
Complete saturation. They're brushed with sauce. This sticky, dark red, sweet, acidic sauce. Before, during, and after the cook.
It's a mess.
A glorious mess. But the sauce becomes the main event. It's the dominant flavor.
Okay, so then we move north a bit and west, and we hit Kansas City, the sweet spot.
KC is the great unifier.
Because they do everything.
Everything. Ribs, bunt ends, chicken, sausage, you can find it all. But they're defined by their sauce, that one signature sauce.
Thick, tomato, and molasses-based. Super sweet, super rich.
And the application's key, too. It's a finishing sauce.
Right, so it goes on in, what, the last half hour of the cook?
Something like that, yeah. It caramelizes a little, but it doesn't get that, deep, tough lacquer that a true wet rib gets.
Kansas City is the style that lets you eat anything, as long as it's covered in their sauce.
And finally, the Carolinas.
The keepers of the old school flame. This is hardcore pork territory.
And it is defined almost entirely by its sauces.
Super acidic, vinegar-based sauces. And that's tied directly to the local agriculture. Apple cider vinegar was just what they had.
And the borders there are, they are aggressively fought over.
Oh, fiercely. East North Carolina is the purest form of this. It is whole hog barbecue. The entire animal.
The whole animal. Wow.
And the sauce is nothing but vinegar, red pepper flakes, and salt. They actively, reject sugar and tomatoes. It's almost puritanical. It's an insistence on pre-Civil War flavoring.
So then you cross a state line into South Carolina.
And you see this historical fingerprint of migration. South Carolina is famous for that yellow mustard-based sauce.
And it's a direct result of German immigrants in the 18th and 19th centuries. They brought their love of mustard and vinegar and just blended it into the existing pork tradition.
And Western North Carolina is the compromise between them all.
It's the compromise. They add a little ketchup, a little brown sugar to that vinegar base. It makes it thicker, tannier, a little sweeter. It's like they're nodding to Kansas City's palate without totally abandoning their vinegar soul.
It's so clear how the flavor tracks the economics. The Carolina styles are built on pigs being cheap and easy. They didn't need the huge infrastructure of Texas cattle ranching.
And apple cider vinegar was abundant. It was local. The sauce isn't an afterthought. It's the main driver of identity because it was the easiest thing to make affordably.
Which brings us back to the unseen narrative. Why are these distinctions so fierce? It's not just about taste.
It's psychological comfort. It's culinary sovereignty. The sociologist John Shelton Reed said it best, that Southern barbecue is the closest thing the U.S. has to European wines or cheeses.
You drive 100 miles and the style completely changes.
And that boundary reinforces who you are, what your community values.
And the social dynamics of the sauce itself. The sauce, or the lack of it, is basically a cultural weapon.
How so?
Well, Texas rejects sauce to assert purity, the purity of the meat, the skill of the pitmaster. It's a signal of high status.
They see it as a cover-up for bad barbecue.
Exactly. It's a distraction, a sentiment you hear all the time in competition circles. It's basically an assertion of technical superiority.
whereas Kansas City uses sauce as a democratizing force.
Yes, it's a unifier. It keeps the meat moist, sure, but let's be honest. It can also cover up a few flaws in the cook.
Right. It creates this very consistent, accessible identity that's built around that sweet profile, no matter what's underneath.
It's the difference between celebrating the ingredient's origin, like Texas, and celebrating the communal experience, like Kansas City.
But that fierce regional identity it's eroding now.
It is. Modern pitmasters, they're driven by global connectivity, by market demands. They're challenging these old boundaries. They're doing fusion.
You see Texas techniques meeting, like vibrant Cuban flavors, at a place called Apocalypse BBQ.
Or Kansas City's slow cook getting blended with bold Thai spices at Buck Tuli BBQ.
The new currency isn't adherence to tradition anymore, it's innovation.
And that kind of blending, it signals a massive structural shift. It moves barbecue from being this rigid, local thing defined by historical agriculture.
Pork because pigs were cheap, vinegar because apples grew there.
Right. To this national cross-cultural phenomenon that's driven by innovation and just global flavor seeking.
It's the modern anxiety of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
How long can you hold on to a tradition when global ingredients promise something that might be better?
The boundaries are just dissolving, identities becoming fluid. It's driven by entrepreneurs, not by history.
It makes you wonder which rules are actually essential and which are just, the bureaucratic leftovers of old supply chains.
That's a perfect pivot. Yeah, because we just established that political lines are drawn over sauce. But that raises a bigger question. Are the rules we think are objective, like the visual signs of a good cook, are they just as culturally manipulated?
So we're moving from the culture wars to pure chemistry.
Exactly. At the core of all this low and slow cooking, you have these three immutable physical challenges. They dictate everything.
The stall, the bark, and the rest.
Those are the mechanical facts. And they force pitmasters into some strategic and sometimes controversial choices.
And the most visually iconic, but maybe the most scientifically dubious symbol of the whole process
is the smoke ring.
The smoke ring. It's the aesthetic validation. It's the little sign that says, this was cooked low and slow with real wood.
Okay, so factually, what is it? It's that pink or reddish band, right?
Yeah, usually about an 1/8 to a 1/2 inch thick, right under the bark. It looks raw, but it's completely cooked.
And the formation is just a chemical reaction. It involves the meat's color protein, myoglobin.
Right. When wood or charcoal burns, it releases nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide.
And those gases dissolve on the moist surface of the meat, and they bind to the myoglobin.
And that binding process is what makes the protein keep its pink color, even when it gets cooked way past the temperature where it would normally turn brown.
And it only happens in this super narrow temperature window.
Between about 140 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the internal temp gets past that, the myoglobin is denatured, and that pink color just won't set.
So the smoke ring is basically a proof of work certificate. It proves the meat spent time in a low-temperature, smoky environment.
Here it comes.
Here is the massive contradiction. The official story, especially in competition BBQ, is that a visible smoke ring equals superior flavor.
But the food science is crystal clear.
So clear. The smoke ring does not enhance flavor or tenderness.
At all.
Not at all. The flavor comes from the smoke compounds that stick to the surface, the bark. The pink color inside is literally just pigment that's been stabilized by gas.
And yet, pitmasters will kill themselves trying to get it. This purely visual goal.
Yeah.
The aesthetic expectation is just that powerful.
They do things specifically to maximize it, like making sure the meat is cold when it goes in, just to prolong the time it spends in that critical temperature window.
Or keeping the initial temps super low and steady.
This reliance on aesthetic performance creates this perverse incentive. It's a perfect example of a system-competitive BBQ prioritizing a visual metric over the actual science of taste.
The aesthetic rule overrides objective reality. Because the stakes are so high, the judges need some kind of visible proof of effort.
And because that visual is so essential to winning prize money, pitmasters have, inevitably figured out how to fake it.
How?
They can artificially create or enhance the smoke ring using curing agents like sodium nitrite.
The same stuff used to cure bacon or ham.
The very same. The irony is just, it's so rich. The visual sign that was supposed to prove authentic wood smoke can be faked with a chemical.
And that completely destabilizes the original rule.
It had to. It led to the smoke ring being disqualified as a primary judging criterion in a lot of high-level professional competitions. The demand for perfection created the means of its own deception.
Okay, so let's talk about the physical thing that challenges a pitmaster's patience more than anything else. The stall.
This is where hours can feel like days.
So the stall is when the internal temperature of a big cut of meat, like a brisket, just hits a plateau.
Usually between 150 and 170 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature just stops rising. It might even drop a degree or two, and it can stay there for hours, even if the pit temperature is constant.
And this is just pure thermodynamics. It's not a mistake.
It's evaporative cooling. As the meat cooks, moisture gets pushed to the surface. As that water evaporates into the smoker, it pulls heat away from the meat faster than the heat from the pit can be absorbed.
It's sweating. The meat is literally sweating.
And that process is fighting the convection of the smoker. And this is the moment where, the purists, the traditionalists, they just endure, they write it out,
Waiting for the surface to dry out enough for the temperature to start climbing again.
which can add 4, 5, even 6 unexpected hours to an already 20-hour cook.
And the solution that was developed to deal with this pressure, especially for restaurants or competitions, is the controversial Texas crutch.
The crutch, a necessary strategic maneuver when you're facing economic pressure.
The mechanic is simple enough. You just wrap the meat tightly in foil or pink butcher paper once it hits that stall temperature.
And that wrapping seals in all the moisture and heat. It stops the evaporative cooling dead in its tracks.
So the temperature immediately starts to rise again, quickly and consistently. It's super effective at speeding things up and keeping the final product moist.
But there's a huge technical trade-off.
Wrapping kills the bark.
It kills the bark. That crispy, flavorful crust is formed by the Maillard reaction, which is the browning that happens when amino acids and sugars react under heat.
And that reaction needs a dry surface.
So when you wrap the meat, you're essentially steaming it in its own juices. You save the moisture, but you destroy the texture of the bark.
So the modern compromise is to add a step at the end.
A strategic re-entry. Pit masters who use the crutch have to unwrap the meat and put it back in the smoker for, say, 10 to 30 minutes at a slightly higher temperature,
To re-crisp that bark.
just to re-engage the Maillard reaction on the surface. You accelerate the cook, but you have to add a final texture recovery step.
The psychology of the Texas crutch is what gets me.
It's a pragmatic admission. It's saying that strict traditionalism, unwrapped, all smoke, all the time, it's just impractical sometimes.
Especially when you have deadlines.
It's a strategic tool born out of necessity. It validates that, quote, the crutch doesn't mean you're cheating, it means you're smart.
It means you're prioritizing the result, a moist, tender brisket, over some rigid, time-consuming adherence to an old rule.
It's that choice between the philosophical ideal and the necessary compromise to get the job done.
And that same pragmatism defines how flavor is delivered, too. I mean, the whole rubs versus marinades debate.
Right. How do they work chemically, and why would you choose one over the other?
Rubs are all about the surface. They're dry blends of spices, herbs, sugar. They stick to the outside.
They don't really penetrate deep into the meat.
No, but they create that incredible crust through caramelization during the cook. You use them when you want to enhance the meat's natural flavor, not change it.
Marinades, on the other hand, are all about depth.
They're liquid. They use acidic bases, vinegar, citrus, enzymes from things like pineapple, even yogurt.
And they penetrate the meat to infuse flavor deep inside. But more importantly, they tenderize,
They chemically break down the connective tissue and muscle fibers.
which makes them perfect for cheaper, tougher cuts like pork shoulder or skirt steak. They need that structural breakdown before they even hit the heat.
The downside is that you have to be so careful with heat management that acid and sugar will just scorch if you're not paying attention.
So the most sophisticated technique is to layer them.
You marinate first for that internal tenderizing. Then you pat the meat completely dry. This is critical to avoid that steaming issue we talked about. And then you apply a heavy rub before you cook.
A layered approach. Maximum flavor, maximum texture.
It's just manipulating chemistry for the perfect bite.
Okay, so if the American scene is governed by competition and compromise, global traditions take the fire ritual and make it even more formal.
They often tie the cooking process directly to the social structure. We're shifting perspective completely now, from the competitive smoker to the communal, sometimes dictatorial fire pit.
Let's go back to South Africa and the braai. This is not just grilling, it is the nation's foremost culinary custom. It's all about patience and mastering heat control.
And the braai is defined by the wood they use.
Right.
Quality local wood.
Camille doring or camel thorn. And sicklebush, incredibly dense, dry hardwoods.
And they're prized for their intense, long-lasting heat and very little flame.
That choice of wood is the first layer of technical difficulty. That density means the fire is hard to start and even harder to manage. It takes hours just to get a bed of perfect coals.
And that technical challenge gets immediately translated into a rigid social requirement.
Yes, the etiquette is so strict. The host is the braymaster. And nobody, absolutely nobody, interferes with the fire or the grid without getting explicit permission.
You can't poke the coals, you can't add wood, you can't even move the meat.
It's a power structure. The fire is dangerous, precious, and difficult. So the person who controls the fire controls the social order of the entire gathering.
It's formalized community order built on technical skill.
And the meats reflect that communal focus. You have boerewors, this coiled sausage with coriander and nutmeg.
Lamb chops, peri-peri chicken.
Right, which is often heavily marinated and basted. The diversity of the protein is a nod to all the local agricultural traditions, but they're all unified under the braymaster's control.
Now, compare that rigid social structure to Argentina's asado.
This is less about a dictator and more about purity and precision, honoring the ingredient.
Asado is a cultural institution. It's about flavor, technical precision, and just communal joy.
And their unique tool is the perilla.
The open grill.
Yeah.
It has these adjustable V-shaped grates.
And that design is brilliant. The V-shape channels all the rendered fat away from the heat and into a little trough.
So no flare-ups.
Exactly. It guarantees a clean, steady cook that never scorches the meat.
And their fuel is quebracho charcoal. The name means axe breaker.
Tells you how dense it is. And that density is key because it guarantees this high, consistent, clean heat for a long time with very little smoke flavor.
The whole Argentine system is designed to honor the natural quality of their beef, cuts like tri-tip or short ribs.
They prioritize clean, stable heat to highlight the meat itself. It's the complete opposite of the U.S. system that's all about integrating complex smoke over hours. The Argentine method is designed not to mask the meat.
And that minimalism is complemented by something like chimichurri.
This fresh herb sauce. Parsley, garlic, oregano, red pepper, vinegar, olive oil.
It seems like just a condiment, but its function is so essential.
It's an aggressive palate cleanser, a counterpoint. While the philosophy is all about the purity of the beef, chimichurri is this robust, acidic, herbaceous punch that just cuts right through the richness of the fat.
It adds brightness and complexity. It stops you from getting palate fatigue during a marathon of meat.
And then we go across the Pacific to Korean BBQ, gogigi.
And the focus shifts completely again. It's not about control or purity. It's about interactive intimacy and sensory overload.
It's a communal, hands-on experience. Grilling marinated beef like galbi or bulgogi, or pork like dawaji bulgogi right there at your table.
And the pork preparation, the dawaji bulgogi, is way more intense than the beef. The marinade is this pungent gochujang spike thing that's anything but subtle.
That rich, funky preparation just matches the character of pork so much better than the lighter, sweeter marinades they use for beef.
The whole experience is a structured feast, defined by these ritual components. You have the burganchan.
The small side dishes. Pickled radish, grilled napa kimchi.
And they're designed specifically to stave off palate fatigue. They provide these sharp, acidic, fermented counterpoints to the rich, charred meat.
And you have the dipping sauce, samjang, the universal condiment.
It's a perfect psychological mechanism. It combines the savory, earthy funk of fermented soybean paste with the sweet heat of chili paste.
It hits like 5 different taste profiles in one go. It creates a complexity that just demands your attention.
But the apex of the whole ritual is the mandatory Sam.
The wrap.
You take a lettuce or perilla leaf, you add a piece of meat, maybe a sliver of raw garlic, some kimchi, a bit of samjang.
And the critical instruction.
You must eat it in one bite.
That requirement right there. That's about enforced intimacy and sensory overload. It demands communal interaction. It's about shared experience over your own personal preference.
You can't just quietly dissect your plate. The perfect, packed, single bite forces you to participate in the collective moment.
We also have to talk about the high heat anomaly, the Indian tandoor oven, because it just fundamentally challenges the American low and slow dogma.
Right. The tandoor is this enclosed cylindrical clay oven that can get up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit.
While American pits are running at, what, 225, 275?
The tandoor proves that time is not the only way to get tenderness.
It shows the dual path. The American method uses low temps for many hours to slowly render collagen into gelatin, succulence through time.
The tandoor, though, uses rapid, intense, radiant heat.
That intense heat cooks the surface almost instantly, sealing in moisture, while also providing enough thermal shock to break down the connective tissue inside the meat very quickly.
So the result is the same.
The result is the same, collagen breakdown, tenderness, but it's achieved through completely opposite mechanical means. It just proves that the only way to do it is an illusion.
Okay, so technical rules get manipulated. Social rules are built on technical difficulty. If tradition is so often manufactured, we have to trace the roots of barbecue itself. See how its identity was built, often on the backs of marginalized people.
And the story doesn't start in Texas or Memphis. It starts with Caribbean indigenous peoples.
It's not bad, you know.
Exactly. The deepest root of the word barbecue comes from their practice of barbacoa, slow cooking meat over a raised wooden grate, using indirect flame and green wood to get a lot of smoke and steam.
And the Spanish, Columbus's crew, they documented this in the early 1500s.
So over the next few centuries, that practice moves into the American South. And that Native American technique blends with European materials and, this is the crucial part, with African American flavor traditions.
European colonists brought the pigs and cattle. The British brought the tradition of basting meat with tangy, acidic sauces.
But the pivotal transformation came from enslaved African Americans. They adapted European ingredients, but they added this incredible complexity with spice rubs and flavors like red pepper, garlic, vinegar bases, things that trace back to African foodways.
Their unique knowledge of fire and flavor dramatically enriched the whole Southern palate.
And this is where the systems of oppression actively shaped the cultural outcome. Enslaved African Americans were consistently forced to do the dirty, essential, arduous work of barbecuing for their white enslavers, especially for big celebrations.
We're talking about all-night labor.
All night, stoking the fire, maintaining that exact low temperature for hours, applying sauces, preparing all the sides. They were the masters of the pit. They transformed cheap, undesirable cuts, the whole hog, the pork shoulder, into luxurious feast food.
The heartbreaking irony is that while these cooks were celebrated for their skill, the credit for the recipes, for the techniques that became Southern cuisine, that credit almost always went to the white enslaver in the historical records.
Right. Barbecue started as a poor man's pastime, a cheap way to cook the cuts that affluent markets didn't want. And then it was appropriated and elevated into this symbol of Southern identity.
And even after emancipation, through the Jim Crow era, segregation meant that black-owned barbecue joints were often pushed into low-income neighborhoods.
While the national acclaim and the commercial success often went to white-owned operations that had learned the techniques from the marginalized masters.
Kansas City is such a clear case study of this. The KC barbecue tradition didn't start in some glossy downtown district. It started with Henry Perry in 1908. He was known as the Barbecue King. He started selling slow-cooked ribs wrapped in newsprint in the 18th and Vine African-American neighborhood.
And his legacy is undeniable. One of his cooks, a man named Arthur Pinkard, went on to co-found the famous Gates & Sons Barbecue.
That lineage shows the true foundational roots of KC's style. It existed entirely within the black community and low-income areas first.
And you see that legacy struggling for full recognition even today. You look at Jones Barbecue, owned by Deborah and Mary Jones, a black-owned neighborhood place that got huge mainstream attention after being on the show Queer Eye.
And that boost in visibility and demand was incredible. They had to have a second pit just to keep up.
Their story just underscores the ongoing struggle. The deep tradition was rooted in the neighborhood, but it often required this external mainstream validation in the post-segregation era for the economic engine to really kick in.
Now let's jump to Argentina, because the creation of the asado's identity is a textbook example of an invented tradition serving powerful political goals. We have to dissect the myth of its authenticity.
The material basis was there. The Spanish brought cattle, sheep, pigs. They thrived on the pampas. Beef was abundant and cheap.
So the environment was perfect for a meat-centric cuisine.
But the cultural status of asado as this quintessential unifying national tradition that was constructed much later, late 19th, early 20th century.
And the timing is critical. Argentina was going through this rapid, chaotic modernization, a massive influx of poor European immigrants, mostly Italians and Spaniards.
And the governing philosophy at the time was Gobernar is podlar, to govern is to populate. The elites needed a powerful, unifying cultural symbol to stabilize and assimilate this immigrant-heavy nation.
And this is where they leveraged cultural materialism. The intellectual elites and political leaders started to romanticize the rural gaucho, the Argentine cowboy.
He was a symbol of rugged native purity.
They used literature, most famously El Gaucho Martín Fierro, to promote the asado as this core, authentic expression of Argentinidad, of Argentine identity.
The calculation was pure politics. Food nourishes the stomach before it can feed the mind, so they took the simple fact of cheap, abundant beef.
And they wrapped it in manufactured folklore.
By branding the traditional gaucho open-fire meal as this high-status national symbol, they achieved two things. First, they created a feeling of national unity, a Criollo consciousness that transcended all the ethnic differences of the new immigrants.
And at the same time, they provided a massive status symbol for the powerful Argentine beef industry.
The manufactured folklore served the objective of powerful groups to consolidate a unified national identity out of all these diverse materials.
It's the perfect, cynical meeting of economics and culture. The system was designed to honor the material, the beef, but the ritual of honoring it was constructed by elites, specifically to sell a feeling of unity.
It just teaches you that every cherished tradition has a date and a reason for its invention.
So we've taken this deep analysis from the 4 distinct American regional styles, where sauce is revealed to be a political and economic statement.
Through the contested science of the smoke ring, where visual performance overrides taste.
And finally, across the globe, from the rigid social hierarchy enforced by the South African Braymaster's control over his fire, to the carefully constructed national pride behind the Argentine asado.
The core truth we've uncovered isn't about temperature or wood. It's that every single element of cooking meat over fire, from choosing a dry rub over a marinade, from adopting the Texas crutch to hit a deadline, to the mandate to eat a Korean salmon in one bite.
It's all a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
And it's designed not just for flavor, but for a desired social, political, or economic outcome.
The deepest exploration of barbecue isn't about what would you choose.
It's about what history you decide to burn and who benefits from the final recipe.
Because if tradition is truly anything that is transmitted or handed down from the past to the present, and if we now know that even our most cherished food traditions were invented, sometimes by political elites to create unity or to serve commercial objective, or even to disguise the appropriation of marginalized labor,
then what essential modern-day rituals are we inventing right now? Rituals we just accept without question that future historians will dissect as thinly veiled political or commercial strategies. What beloved national habit may be tied to our digital lives or the pressure to be hyper-efficient? What will ultimately be exposed as pure structural incentive designed to benefit only a powerful few?
something to chew on.
Indeed.
This episode is powered by Neon Core Media for stories they said were too real to tell.